Computers crashed.
We are live.
We are live.
Well, that's questionable.
I suppose one of us should say good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, everyone. Oh, do you see that? That was smooth, wasn't it?
Well, you say it, Ian. Go on.
Go on. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, everyone. Gary is here somewhere. We've lost him. He was here. We're having some technical difficulties at the moment. So Bruce has just joined us. I have no idea what Gary was going to open with. So, Bruce, what's news?
Well, no, nothing. I've got nothing. Actually, one interesting. An interesting thing is that the EAA has come out hammering the NPRM in the USA. How about that for an acronym-laden sentence? Yeah. So we've got some full-size or manned aviators on our side as well.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week on that because I've seen a few comments roaming around a couple of the forums, and I don't know how true this is. I've had a very busy week, so I've not been able to look at some of this stuff, but I've noticed a couple now of the larger YouTube channels are telling people not to use the hey, he's back.
There goes the neighborhood. There goes the neighborhood.
Can you hear me? Over.
Can't you hear it then?
No.
Can't hear me. Okay, all right. You can't hear me then. Fair enough.
I was a couple of them are the bigger YouTube channels. One we've mentioned before has been telling people not to use the AMA response sheet, because what they're saying is all of those responses will be discounted because they're basically identical. Now, I don't know how accurate or how true that is, and perhaps you know more about this, Bruce or Gary, than I do, but it's very interesting that anyone who is using that standard response form are actually potentially not going to be getting involved or helping the situation at all.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. I mean, I've been through this whole consultation process in so many areas and forums, and when you do have a form leader, they're simply tallied. You know, there were this many responses that said this, rather than being individually examined and looked at. And of course, if you're just going to repeat the AMA's line, well, if they've heard it once, they've heard it 1,000 times. They're not going to take any more notice of 1,000 responses that say one thing as they are 10,000 that say the same thing. Everyone has to have their own unique individual perspective so that people have to read it. They can't just tick a box and say, yep, handled. So you've really got to make their job difficult, make it really difficult to the point where they say, this is too hard, let's change this rule.
I am surprised how few comments there have been, really. I don't think it's up at 10,000 yet, is it? No. And how vitriolic some of the AMA member comments are against the general community, because that's what isn't that what we've got to be, a general community of folks all trying to move in the same direction,
strength and unity.
Yeah, and it's not happening, is it? I'll just move around a bit like this.
No,
it's not happening, and it just annoys me, and I can see it being a lever for the FAA to say, oh, maybe all right, maybe we'll carve out a little bit, tiny bit more, but not much more. AMA, whatever it is, what I'm trying to say is they'll claim some small thing as a huge victory, and they'll use these negative comments from the AMA membership as a leverage, and they'll believe they've won, and nobody will have won at all.
Yeah, there's some subtle things here as well, though, because these freers, you know, where you can go and fly your model, your home-built model, you have to have made more than 50% of that model for it to classify as home-built. So you go and buy an ARF, where you just throw the radio gear in it and a motor or something and a battery.
Wow.
It doesn't qualify. It's not home-built. You've got to build it from sticks and tissue and things. And so that means that these AMA modifiers that think, oh, we'll just buy another Horizon model and fly it at our field. No, if you're not going to build more than half of it, you'll have to get one that is certified. It's going to cost you a fortune in Arm and League, and then if it's certified, you can't fly it at a freer anyway. You've got to fly it under a standard or a limited operation. So they just do not have any clue what they're doing. It is just they're so lost.
And part of
the first.
Sorry.
Go on, Ian, sorry.
No, you carry on, Gav.
Well, I think that's the first time I've heard that, Bruce, and that is stunning, absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's been. I think I mentioned it in my. It's funny I mentioned it, but I don't think I highlighted it. The problem with this is there are so many rabbit holes to this. The second you go down one hole, there's another turns left and another turns right. And the other interesting part about this is people don't quite realise that it will basically be illegal to sell any aircraft that isn't compliant as well in the USA. You know, any manufacturer, any shop caught selling these aircraft, distributors, they will not be allowed to sell close to. Well, pretty much 90% of RTF that's on the shelf today that isn't compliant goes. If you import it, then you will become legally responsible for ensuring it's compliant, and the onus stands on you at that point, including the fines. Because once you class it as self-built, the onus shifts to you. It's not that you get a free pass. The actual difference in this is who's responsible. If it's not classed as self-built, you can blame the retailer and the manufacturer. If it is self-built, you're responsible. You don't get a free pass, and what happens then is actually you can go to jail for not complying. So you're starting to see a lot of people wake up to it, in the sense of DJI have obviously put out their statement and their words on it, which I think pretty much makes sense. You've seen the AMA statement, which, I'm not convinced on that. It's
Sorry, I better check my email, because of course I did invite them.
You did. And I just felt, for me, it was very protection. It felt very, bit of it suits us, therefore we're going to go down this road. There is nothing, there is not one bit in this as it is that should go ahead today. And that's the worst part. At least with the EU rules, you looked at it and went, I don't like bits of this. But fundamentally, it doesn't really change much. For the most part, it doesn't change much unless you're flying in a congested area. That's the basics of this, whereas the US ones are fundamentally different to any other part of the world. No other country's gone to this level. No other country's deemed, why force network ID on everyone? Well, we know why. They want control of the airspace, and they want to see where every drone is flying at any one point in time. Therefore, they want to be able to log into a computer. Do
you really believe that? Do you really believe that? Or is it? No, I don't. Are you not looking at it the wrong way? Is it not just a data play? They want the data. They want user data that they can sell on to others. Oh, now Bruce has had problems.
Oh, Bruce, we've lost Bruce.
That's short.
I think it's three things. I think the federal government have gone, if we can see where every drone is flying in the US at any time, that would be amazing. Number one, box ticked. Number two, now we have control of seeing where every drone is. We can then convert it into a UTM and then charge for entrance into the airspace. Boom. And three, the big companies can plow large amounts of money into it and suddenly go, oh, we're going to slice up this section of airspace for our own use. And we are now going to be delivering parcels, and you're all now restricted to 100 foot. Because once you go down this road, it's the first slab in the pavement to the end of the road. And that's the reality.
Oh, I like that. Bruce, you just missed an absolute winner then. The first slab in the pavement to the end of the road. That's brilliant.
Excellent.
I'm going to pretend I just made that up, but I would actually be fibbing there. Don Joyce said, don't we need an agreement upon alternate to the FAA proposal that's rather than just say, no, we don't like that. That's also true.
We do, but the problem is they're not asking for that. And this is the problem. We can't tell them an alternative because they're not asking for an alternative. What they're asking is for feedback on the current proposals. Now, at this point in time, there is no opportunity for you to give any genuine response. And you are correct, Don, in saying I don't like this won't get us anywhere. However, at this stage, all we can say is we feel these bits of the legislation are completely disproportionate to the risks involved based on the fact that there's never been an accident, the fact that no one's ever been harmed, yet cars kill people every day and you want to restrict us. And we feel this level of legislation is a more reasonable based on other countries taking it. I think the reality is you're going to have to accept remote ID is coming in one form or another, whether it be broadcast or network. It's the network element that's the issue here for the most part, and the way they want to restrict model aircraft. They shouldn't even be involved. No other country has put model RC involved. There's no reason. The irony in all this is, and I think I said this before, that whilst they've blamed drones for creating this legislation, it is ready-to-fly drones that come off the lightest. Most ready-to-fly aircraft will be easily able to comply through a software update. Anything that's made in the last 3 years, there's no massive technical obstacles here for this. It's very, very simple stuff. An app update and a firmware update, a drone can cover this. Yet they are massively restricting all general model RC for no good reason.
There is a good reason,
Great.
and it's a commercial one. There's no good safety reason. There's a good commercial reason, and that that's the whole problem. It is being missold on the grounds of safety when it's nothing to do with it. And speaking, we were talking before about the fraction or the factions forming within the community and how the the AMA people are hammering on these evil drone flies. That's why I proposed that unification event, which is everyone flying at the same moment on the same day around the world, just to show that even if you put all these drones in the air at once, people aren't going to die. And I think that's what we need to do, focus on the positive things we can do to get our case out there. And the EAA actually has requested to the FAA that the comment period be extended to 120 days, because I don't think 60 days is long enough, because this is so important. And a lot of people don't even know this is going on. So they've made a request for that to happen. Hopefully the FAA will comply, but I doubt they will, because they don't have to. And then the other thing is we need to get, and you were saying, Gary, not many comments so far. That's because the vast majority of people don't even know what's going on. I'm talking about the public. We need to get the public involved, get them aware, get them educated, let them know that these drone rules are actually not just going to be stopping people from flying a Phantom over your swimming pool. They're actually going to be killing a hobby, and a very popular hobby, a hobby that is dear to the heart of just about every person on the planet. I think everyone at some stage has flown or been involved in a group where someone has flown a model aircraft. And most people have done that. So we need to pull those heartstrings and tell them, look, this is being missold to you as a safety thing. It's not. It is an attempt to kill a hobby for commercial expedience, and that is totally unacceptable. And remember, America, the land of the home and the free of the brave, or whatever it is, whatever they say, that's being destroyed. It's no longer the home of the free and the brave. It's the home of the compliant and the rule makers. We need to get across to them. This is almost unconstitutional, but we need the whole world all pulling in the same direction at once through a unifying event such as this International Drone Day. And everyone
Don said it, and I wanted to say it to you. That's why I'm keeping his comment on up there. Let's pick a day. Let's stop all this talking. Let's pick a day, Bruce.
But the thing is, we have to be careful about the day we pick. It has to be a day so that everyone's off work. So it has to be a weekend, right? And the timing is also important, because in some countries you can't legally fly at night. And if you're going to do it all at the same time, some countries will be in the dark. I'm happy to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, half an hour before I usually get up, and do my flight. But we also need to realize, and people have said, but what if it's raining? Well, you can fly something indoors. It doesn't matter. As far as the media is concerned, it was flying. It doesn't matter if it's indoors in your carport, outside at night, during the day. We just need to have the numbers, the volume, that we can claim that, we've had all these things in the air. That's all we need to claim. They've all been in the air at this time. Doesn't matter if they're inside a building or whatever, because it's raining. And so it'll be a weekend. I'm going to try and look at the time zones and get the maximum amount of population. Certainly the continental USA has to be in daylight, because this is their issue. And I'll come back with suggested times and dates, and we'll see what people want. But we will have to define a day. It has to be within the 60-day comment period. I think we should have it close to the end, but not right at the end, so that people, it's fresh in their minds. When they hear this in the media, it's fresh in their minds, and the call to action is, we better do this now because we've only got a week left or something, And we have to coordinate this, I think, with the celebrity aspect. I'm trying to get as many ideas, and I've got a few people lined up I'm trying to get hold of, to bring common household names into this. It's no good you or me or the most popular FPV channels on the planet putting this stuff up. It has to be people that are known to the great unwashed, the Casey Neistat's, the James Mays, the whoever's that have some kind of link to this hobby. They need to get out there and put their face in front of regular folks that otherwise wouldn't be watching our channel, so we get as many people involved as possible. And this is our only leverage. It's to leverage our small amount of control of social media to have a larger control of the general population, and they ultimately control the politicians who make the decisions.
Spy Drone and Donna are making a fair point. You were talking about social media. If you either go for 10 o'clock on the 1st of whatever, because 10 o'clock local, because also your social media you're going to miss out if it's 2 in the morning, wherever. You're not going to get the same kick as if, I don't know, I'm just thinking aloud, as if you did 10 o'clock on your local time on the day. But then they're not all in the air together, are they? I've taught myself out of that, as I was saying.
This sets a baseline world record. This is the world record, the most drones that have ever been flown at once. And if we can get people just to make an acknowledgement on a web page somewhere, we can tally those numbers up and say, look, there were X thousand drones being flown at the same time, which represents far more than we're flying regularly at any time, all flown at once. And the media are going to look at that, and that's going to be the baseline figure that we're going to look at. If you say they were flying throughout the day, well, it could have just been, it dilutes the whole effect.
Yeah.
We want worldwide coverage. Yeah.
I talked myself out of that. Well, then the next thing to do is also apply to the Guinness Book of Records, because they can take 6 weeks to decide on the criteria for a record. So I've been looking at that for other reasons, but it should just cost five quid and or $5 and get them. Won't the Earth wobble? Well, if we get them all to fly which way, east to west or west to east, so we can blow the Earth round the other way. Maybe that's one of the media hooks, trying to turn the globe the other way, or make it go faster, make time go by quicker. Yeah. So, well, just get on with it, Bruce. Hurry up.
I'm getting on with it.
Come on, Bruce. Come on.
Yeah,
come on.
Why do you think I get up at 2:30 in the morning?
Well, you are ahead of us, of course. So I mean, you are getting it done ahead of us. And some jerk deliberately flying unsafely during that day. Yeah, that's true, Greg. I can hear what you're saying there.
Yeah, there could be people trying to ankle tap us by doing that. But I think what we'd have to do is say, well, register on a website or a web page or a social media thing. Register your thing, and if you're not registered, you don't count. And I don't think anyone who's going to be flying unsafely is going to register.
I got a cracking spot. I got a cracking spot just outside of Gatwick. It's perfect.
I'm sure the environmentalists will join in.
Outside 4.6 kilometers. Yeah, perfectly legal. Yeah.
That's the other analysis I'm working on, because people always say, "Oh, it's these idiots with all these idiots with their phantom drones. They're the problem." But when you crunch the numbers, no, actually, if you look at the number of phantom drones sold and the number of actual evidenced incidents, they are some of the best behaved people in the world. They really are. You compare them to manned aviators, you compare them to all the other little groups. We might have 10 or 12 incidents in a year which are proven with phantoms flying near fire sites. But hey, everything else, driving on the roads, look how many people get tickets every day. They're bad people. So we need to say, yes, they're always idiots, but as a percentage of the total community, this is a really well-behaved community. Don't beat on them because they own a phantom and you fly a petrol plane over a grass field somewhere.
Sorry, Karen, go.
Well, I was just going to say, this is also the thin end of the wedge. Greg's saying you wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't come down to cars. Well, I think that's one of Altitude Angels. They're thinking. That's why they don't call themselves an unmanned traffic management system. They call themselves a unified traffic management system, and they don't care what that traffic is. They'll look after it, and I think they're looking far ahead. It will, if we can have autonomous cars. Perhaps this is the great trial run for that sort of a thing. Let's see how it works for them. It's just going to be harder with cars because there's a lot more of them. So I agree with you, Greg. I do think there's a chance we'll go that way. Sorry.
It was an interesting point. Was it DJI raised it about, would you tolerate if the government mandated you had to have a transponder in your car that tracked your every move, kept all that data for 6 months, and determined where you can and can't drive, and shut down the motor if you went into a place where you were not authorized to go? I mean, would you accept that? I don't think the public would accept that. So why are we accepting it with our toys?
Yeah. I think, if you look at remote ID in itself, the idea behind broadcast ID has a lot of plus points. If we just talk about the aircraft transmitting its location, I don't like the fact it transmits to ground station. I think that's unnecessary, personally. I think from a safety aspect, you can argue as the aircraft transmitting its location is a reasonable thing. I don't think anyone would argue that isn't a reasonable thing. I don't particularly like the fact it transmits the location of the ground station in an open standard. I don't have a massive problem with it. But as you say, when you start looking at the more concerning data aspects of network ID with logging of that data, preventing not being able to fly if you don't have access, and these USS providers or UTMs, whatever we should be calling them, will have to hold that data for 6 months. That is every aircraft flown in US airspace on network ID. The US government will have access to that data for 6 months. If someone 3 months later makes an accusation, they will be able to go back and go, he was flying in that area that day, knock on his door. And that is a massive amount of data and personal data as well. At the end of the day, GPDR in Europe has a very clear, why is the data being kept? What is its purpose? So is 6 months a reasonable amount of time to hold data on a person such as this? And I don't know what argument is yes on that. I honestly don't know where they say 30 days is a reasonable amount of time. What changes between 30 days and 6 months? What's not going to have happened in one period that might not be enforceable in the longer period? 6 months is an awful long time to hold data. It really, really is.
My question would have to be, if this system had been implemented a year ago, how many lives would have been saved?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I was just, as you probably know, I'm getting quite into the micromobility space and all that sort of thing, and there are actually standards wars going on now within the vehicle world about which data standard to use. And in the ride sharing and scooter market, there's two at the moment: GBFS, and I am going to read it. And GBFS is the general bike share fee specification, and MDS, which is the mobility data specification. And they are using data from the various rides and things and shares to work out what to do in the city. And there's another open one, which was produced by Google. Funny old thing. They've got a vehicle standard as well. And yeah, people in cities are beginning to jump up and down a little bit about how this is ride information is being used by folks and what is it being used for. Of course, it's being used for the greater good of the city and improving how the roads work, but is it really? So it is coming. It's coming all over the place, and we're kind of letting it come. I know it's there in our apps. It's in our pockets anyway, isn't it? Via the various apps we've got. But
yeah, you've only got to walk into a shop now with your phone. You don't even have to unlock your phone. If you walk into a UK, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, but if you walk into a UK retail shop and you walk out and then you open Facebook, you have an ad for that shop on your phone in front of you. And this slipped in over about 3 years, and it fell under all of our radar. Everyone was like, what's this about? And there was a fascinating program on this the other day of how it does it, and how your Wi-Fi is constantly pinging all of these places, and the apps on the devices are pinging the Wi-Fi, and it goes, oh, he was in this place today, so let's give him ads about that. In a very short period of time, we've suddenly gone into a situation that every single movement is being tracked. And I just don't think people have realized it. I honestly don't think people have fully grasped how much of their data is now being spread out into the world and collected and used to build pictures about your shopping habits and your movement. And from this data, you will be able to see what every person has been doing when they're out of their home.
Is that a bad thing, you say? But one of the things, I'm talking about positive side of things, what I'm doing at the moment is I'm going through as much of the world's drone regulation as I can with a fine-tooth comb, because we do need to make suggestions to the FAA. They're not soliciting them, but if we give them suggestions now, they may decide, oh, we thought of this, we're going to use it. Make them think they've thought of it. So I've gone through I'm still going through the rules of all the different countries and coming up with what I think are the best proven aspects of regulation, like New Zealand's shielded operation, like Canada's no prescriptive rules below 250 grams. If we get together the best of all the world's regulations and present it to the FAA and say, look, these are regulations that have been proven to work over a period of time in other countries. If you choose not to use those and something goes wrong, then who's going to be to blame? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's all been done. Just pick up the best of each. Cherry pick them. Cherry pick the best of all the regulations, and away you go. So give them that, and hopefully they'll think that, oh, we can claim that we invented this and we'll run with it, because they have to, they have to invent it themselves. They can't take advice from external sources. It has to be internal. So maybe they'll go through and they'll look at it and go, great, we'll do that. Maybe not.
Well, I think we'd all. I don't think we'd be surprised, but I think the FAA might be surprised if they gave. Go get on my high horse, haven't they? The trouble with the AMA is it's motivated for commercial gain, for things they want out of it. If we went across to England, the BMFA is quite interested in just having nice cups of tea in the shed down the bottom, and they don't really want to get involved, but they have done. But I think I can say with 99% positivity that they're not in it for some sort of big commercial deal, that they're going to make a lot of money off the back of it, and they're not particularly interested in dozens and dozens of new members. They just want to keep making those cup of teas in the shed. Sorry, BMFA. So it's two different kettles of ball games. So I think if you were to say to AMA and BMFA what are sensible rules and regulations, I think regulation authorities would be surprised at how harsh we would police ourselves. But for some reason, we're not being given that chance. Well, I suppose I'm talking myself out of this again, because there has been 100 years of really quite instant free flying. So it's already happened. It's already working. I went right round in a circle there, didn't I?
That's called control line, Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's a bloody mess. We're nearly a month in. Responses, what did you say the numbers were, Gar? They were
Not a lot. I can't remember. It's not a lot.
It's nowhere near. I don't know. It's hard to know where to go with this. I think, Bruce has been really flying the flag on this, and I've said my bit a few times on this. There's a lot of places doing a lot of pushes in the US. I've noticed, interestingly, there's been a bit of kickback from one or two of the US ones against those of us outside the US who spoke about it. Bruce has taken a bit of crap quite unfairly, frankly.
No, that's fair.
It's pretty fair. Take it all.
Whatever it is, it's perfectly
Oh, sorry, I meant
fair.
fairly. Yeah, Bruce took some.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but there is the politics are coming into play now. There are the politics of people being involved, back doors. It's interesting for us because the three of us have no ace in. We have no interest in it. It doesn't affect me one little bit, other than the precedent it sets, and that's the concern for probably all of us. Because if you ace to look at this and go, okay, they've got that through. Let's have a bit of that, please, and then we all end up in the same boat. So. For me, this is about what's right and what's wrong, and I just don't see how anyone can fundamentally say this is the right thing to do.
Well, that's what I was going to say to that to you. It's just about fundamental fairness. It doesn't really matter where you are in the world. It's fundamentally unfair, and wherever you are in the world, you should rail against unfair things.
Yeah.
And aviation has always been a global community because it's about travel and transport, and model aviation is probably similar. But the thing that I'm a bit disappointed in my last video, I called on the different bodies to contact me so we can coordinate our actions, because coordination is essential. We've got to have strategies. We've got to be coordinated, act in unison. Haven't heard from the AMA. Haven't heard from Josh Bixler. I'm talking with the FPV Freedom Coalition, but then again, well, that's magic. Then again, there is so much infighting between some of these organisations that if you talk to them, we're not going to talk to you. Look, I'm wearing my Rotor Riot T-shirt today, but that'll get me offside with somebody. But I mean, I don't take sides. Everyone has to work together. I'm trying to get them all together. But there's just been a complete lack of response from lots of people. Individuals have certainly responded, but the organisations that should be there, spirit, at the front of the charge to sort this, they're just lost and they're just absent without leave. Where are they? Why hasn't the AMA? Do they not watch my channel? I'm sure they do. What about Josh Bixler? I'm sure he's aware of what I'm doing. It'd be hard not to be. So where's them coming saying, okay, yeah, let's coordinate, let's work together? No, it's like, we're going to do our thing. We're going to make a name for ourselves by doing our thing. And the AMA, we're going to make a lot of money by having the only freers in the world. It's like, well, come on, guys, get your act together. If you don't work together, then nobody is going to have anything. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, it's very fragmented. 100% agreed. I almost think the way the FAA's done it intentionally makes it so as well.
Well, I think the trouble is, this isn't the first thing that people should have jumped up and down and worried about. We've been going through things. 336 was the big one, and getting behind. We had him on the show. I can't remember his name.
Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor, he railed and rallied and went for it at his own expense and won, and some bits and lost others. But he was the only bugger trying, and the AMA, nobody got behind him.
Yep. And you notice it was an individual. These things have to be led by individuals. Yeah. I don't think organisations do a good job. You have to have people leading it, not acronyms. So AMA, it's an acronym. What is it like? The flight test community, whatever, it's an acronym, but people put a face to something, that's when it works. And
is that really true? Is that really true that you can't, an acronym can't get it done?
They're not effective, put it that way.
What's Flight Test said now? I've missed that, because obviously there was some comments from Flight Test. Well, where are they standing on this now? I've missed that.
They are against it, but they were in favour of it. They've done a flip-flop. Initially, when they were talking about electronic conspicuity, they came out, oh yes, it's great, fantastic. And then when the actual form of the rule was rolled out, they go, oh no, that's no good, can't have that. So they've done a bit of a flip-flop. And they're generating their own. They've got a second channel which they're putting their videos up on that. But again, I don't think, like, they've only had a few thousand views on some of those videos. The one that Josh did, there's no coverage at all, and they don't seem to be cross-pollinating between their channels. It's like we have to be seen to be doing something. We don't want to do too much. I'm a little disappointed again, and so I think I just flabbergasted. What'll happen is this will all go through, and people will suddenly go, oh, what's happened? We didn't know about this. That's why we've got to make the big noise, rattle the drums, get the media involved. Otherwise, people would just say, oh, not my fault. I didn't know. Nobody told me. Because I don't know why.
Yeah,
if you look at it.
That's where I was trying to go with that previous comment. Is there's been plenty of times that Taylor case was the other one, but we should have got together and had our little arguments then, our little bit of infighting to get that all done, to be ready for the bigger fight. So we're not. People haven't got angry enough early enough to fall out enough to finally coalesce and come together and have a unified voice. I think people will come together at a last rush at this one, but it's far too late, and it's the one that's going to clobber stuff.
You know where this all started? Was that bloody Trappy flying around that university? A lot of people have raised that and said, oh, if Trappy hadn't, pissed off the FAA, we wouldn't have this problem now, which of course is complete bunkum. But a lot of people didn't stand up for him in that situation where he didn't tell anybody. I think the hobby should have stood its ground then and said, this is the future. If you're not happy with it, FAA, then go and do something else. Look after boats or something. This is what's happening. And then Section 336 was rescinded. And again, people, well, that's the way it goes. And then registration came along, and I rallied strongly. I said, don't register. You're basically thin end of the wedge. It's going to get worse from here. And everyone said, oh, no, it's only $5. And so they registered. And now, of course, we've got this NPRM. And it's just been, as I said, thin end of the wedge. It's been building up and up and up and up, preparing people for the inevitable, which is basically, I'm sorry, but due to commercial interest, we've decided to cancel your hobby. Please take up stamp collecting.
Oh, that's right then. Well, that's fine. I mean, if there's a route out, and then you've clearly identified what it is, that's fine. Now you're bob on right, and people were the repeal of 336 was the one that did it, because in case you didn't know, dear viewer, 336 meant the FAA couldn't fiddle with model aircraft flying. As soon as that was knocked out of the way, then the gates were open, the floodgates were open, and the repeal of 336 was led by Lisa Ellman, and I forgot what they're called, the Drone
Consumer Drone Alliance or Commercial Drone.
CDA. They weren't the CDA then when that happened. No. They came it just afterwards, but it's the same crowd, and they did it for commercial interest. They knew they had to skittle or silo model aircraft flying in order to make their super big game plans work. Again, look at the micromobility world, all this VC money going into the ride scooters. And hey, guess what? Chinese scooters that cost $400 don't even last 2 weeks on the streets, and you're replacing them, and they're all rebuilding in it. None of it works. None of it. And Don's saying what a stamp. That's also true. We don't use the post office here anymore either. But where was I going with that? I don't know where I was going with that.
I don't know, you've lost me now. The interesting thing is that this NPRM also gives the US government the ability to lock out overseas competitors to American markets. Like, if they decide we don't want DJI, which they seem to have decided, they can simply say, we're not going to certify you. And so American manufacturers can fill the void and make America great again. So there's so many different things going on behind the scenes that all add pressure to pass this NPRM as it is. What should have happened with 336 is they should have said 336 does not apply to drones outside, except those, 336 should only apply to the hobby of flying model aircraft, not to drone operations, commercial or otherwise, right? And then they could have drawn the distinction between the hobby and what we have now with the store-bought camera drones and things. Then that protection could have remained for the AMA and all its members and those of us who build our own stuff, but they could have put their NPRM and regulated the snot out of people flying Phantoms over airports. But they chose not to make that distinction. And that was, again, I've been saying for years, our regulators are so stupid they can't tell the difference between a quarter-scale Spitfire with a 50cc petrol motor in it and a Inspire 2. Really, they can't tell the difference. They shouldn't be making rules.
Inspire 3 coming next month along with the Matrice 300. But anyway, that's other news. It's nonsense, Don. Yes, people from overseas can comment and have and are, but even not enough of them, because they're also not realizing it's the thin end of the wedge that could come to us. And as Ian said, if he asks to seize this and they go, oh, flip my neck, we were too lenient, they'll soon change the rules in Europe, which are seemingly a dreamland from what we thought was restrictive.
Come to New Zealand, it's a bliss here. You can much more liberal, and yet we've had no deaths either.
The whole thing is an utter nonsense. It's the ACLU, is the Civil Liberties people, isn't it? I think that's them.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think if you look at it though, civil rights in America, the movement wasn't created by an organization. It was created by a person. Wasn't it Martin Luther King? Wasn't he the guy that sort of basically set up that whole thing right from the get? Wasn't it sort of, he led the way? People have followed on in his wake.
Yeah, well, they did wade in on some of the stepping over the line that the FAA has done in the past, and they did it with 336 as well. They jumped up and down, so that might be a lettered organisation that might make a difference. I
looked at the human rights side of things. America is a signatory to the International Human Rights Convention, but it is not. It is subservient to government, so government can override it at any time. It's kind of like one of those feel-good things, human rights. Oh yes, we've signed up to the human rights legislation, but it doesn't mean anything because we're still free to do whatever we want. It's a token gesture, which is crazy. I mean, human rights are either important or they're not. You can't just, play lip service to them. But that's what America does.
Sorry, my Lord Bernick is trying to poison me. I'm sitting here fuming out.
Say that like it's a bad thing. What's going on?
I'm sitting here going,
it's got a little bottle with the word poison on it. How's it trying to poison you?
Yes. So I'm sitting here getting gassed out by it, and I'm thinking, hold on, I better do something about this.
Oh, dear me. Have you opened the window or you
No, I've moved the flue. I've got a workshop log burner and it's really good, but it's got a baffle on the back of it to adjust the flue, and I should have ripped it out because it's a pain, but when you toss a log in it, if you catch the baffle, it flips it closed, and you don't know until you start sitting here going oh, hold on a minute, this is not working properly. So I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I mean, watching you fall asleep and to your eventual demise is not that interesting.
Into carbon monoxide. Yeah. Hell
I don't think there probably is a YouTube channel for that sort of thing, but
it's got to be demonetized at that point, surely.
It probably would be demonetized.
We watched him fall into a death sleep as he was live streaming. It's a freaking mess, and that's the reality of it. And I don't know. I'd love to think we're going to see great change. I have a horrible feeling they're going to take 80% of these comments and go boom, and then they'll go, oh, we agree with that. And Bruce made a very good point. They'll go, oh, we've addressed that. 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 Simple. So people writing something like, I don't agree with drone ID because I don't think it's necessary. They can simply reply to that by saying, we do think it's necessary based on security risks. Gone.
Safety. Just got the word safety in.
Safety. Boom. Yeah. Terrorist. Boom. Yeah.
Again, we have to ask questions through the media, I think, so we get the public involved. Like, where is the legally required risk assessment for this NPRM, which must, all rules must be backed by a risk assessment? Where is it? Show it to us. Where, if the government's not doing its job, and the other thing is, if I want to, as I think I said last time on this program, if I front up to an airport and say, I want to fly a plane, let me take that one, I want to go now, they say, well, you have to prove to us you can fly. Where's your pilot's license? So if the American FAA want to take away our hobby, they're going to prove to us that there is a legitimate reason, and that's where the risk assessment comes in. They can no more pass this NPRM without a risk assessment than we can legally fly an aircraft without a pilot's license.
Yeah. Don, I didn't know this channel doesn't allow notifications. I don't know what I can do about that. Maybe it's because we're using StreamYard and it all gets blown around.
What notifications? That we're live, or can you tell us which ones?
Yeah, which ones, Don?
Certainly appears in my page of things coming up. Yeah. It's an hour late on Ian's page though every day.
Yes.
It's Wales, isn't it? It's Wales.
Yes, last week I sat here an hour later editing a nice video. I sat here, come on, nice, and went, oh bugger, I've got it wrong.
Oh, have you put that up? I didn't see a nice video on your channel. I just saw the usual stuff.
Just the usual crap. Yes. No, I haven't put enough yet. That's why.
I didn't tick the kid friendly thing, child friendly thing, Don. So we shouldn't be child friendly. Anyway, I don't know. We digress.
Time for some expletives.
Yes.
I don't understand this.
We're calling that. It's interesting, actually. I feel for Bruce. I saw your posts on your demonetization. That was shocking. Absolutely shocking behavior.
Well, that's this one demonetized then.
Yeah.
For all that it's worth, all like 25 cents. So yeah,
it's quite funny actually. I shared with a friend. We were talking about this stuff, and he was like, "Oh, you," and I was like, "No. Let me show you some figures." And I was just like, "Look at this video," and he was just like, "Really? Okay, yes, that's what you make off a video." Yeah, well, that's what I make off a video. Bruce makes a lot more because people actually watch his channel. So
I get the whole 90 cents.
Both get the whole 90 cents. Yes, yeah. It's actually interesting on that. I looked at a video which I had been sent a piece of hardware to review, and I was given the opportunity to buy it at a reasonable discount rate if I wanted to keep it afterwards. Nice and legit. Was never paid to do the review. I've never been paid to do a review ever. And I was really close to keeping it, and I really wanted to. And looking back after 12 months, I wouldn't have made back a third of the cost, even at the price to me. And it was just interesting to see. I watched it and thought I nearly kept that. And it just proves, people think the YouTube people make lots and lots of money. It's never about the money. Never about the money.
It's all for love, man.
But your Casey Neistat channel's doing really well.
Yeah, he did. He does all right in the RC community. But I just found it interesting. It was just something. Sometimes you get the opportunity to look at something, and sometimes a vendor will say to you, "If you want to keep it, I'll do you a bit of a deal if you fancy keeping hold of it." And sometimes you think, "Yeah, I'd like to keep that for myself. I like that." And sometimes you send it back. It's weird. I don't know. It's probably not. This isn't the place for it. But it's a dirty word, reviews. Unfortunately, at times, isn't it, Bruce? And it's.
There's always someone looking to, knock you down or claim that you're, a shill for somebody. But it's like you. I've never been paid for a review, but I've been offered a lot of paid reviews. People have said, "Oh, could you review our product? And how much does it cost?" And it doesn't work that way. Sorry. And the interesting thing is, when someone usually makes an offer to pay for a review, I say, I don't charge for doing reviews. Send your product in, but be aware if it's crap, I'll tell people. If it's good, I'll tell people. Yeah. Almost without exception, they never send anything in.
No.
Yeah, I've said that exact same thing to a few people, and
I do it slightly different, Bruce, and rightly or wrongly. And actually, Philip Bloom, if you know Philip Bloom, was talking about this. He did a live podcast earlier in the week, actually, and he was saying, and I take the simple rule: if I think it's shite, I'm not doing it. I just can't be bothered. I'll have a play with it. Everything goes past my personal, am I going to talk about this level, if you see what I mean? Because I'm not here to say to people, this is, I don't do, Bruce, you have Marcy Model Reviews, which is brilliant. It's really, this is good. This is crap. You want to buy this. Don't go near this. I tend to be more on the technical side of, well, actually I don't know what the hell I'm on, but I sort of, for me, my time is so limited. I look at something and go, if it doesn't work, it goes in a box and they have it back. I don't, go away. I'm not interested.
My perspective is somewhat different. I think a good review is great because people know what to buy, but a bad review saves people money.
100%.
And I'm trying to save people money. Most people don't have a lot of money to waste. So if I find something that's crap, I'm happy to tell people about it because I might have saved them anything from $5 to $500.
I'll be honest, I've never had a product I'm not happy with because I don't take it in the first place. I literally, I'll have a look at stuff because you know what it's like, Bruce. You get so many emails these days about, this £20 drone. Would you be interested? No, go away. I'm not interested. And you just go, no. And then sometimes something will catch your eye and you think, okay, let's look at what people have said about it. Let's see what they think. Let's see what it's like already. Is it worth talking about?
It's interesting. A lot more of the products that I'm getting are actually good now. I used to have a lot of reviews of products that were pretty crap, but a lot of the stuff coming out now is actually pretty good stuff. I'm having trouble finding stuff to criticize because it all seems to work pretty well now, which is a real annoyance. I might have to go and buy some real crap off eBay and see what happens.
Get some more FR Sky stuff in, you'll be fine. Oh, that was below the belt.
Yeah, it's always terrible.
That little thing you just put the video out on yesterday or today, that arrived with a dead flight controller. That looked like quite a tidy bit of that thing, whatever that thing's called. Oh,
this is the Beetle Hom. Yeah, it's actually, because initially I didn't like it much because I thought, as a Cinequad, it's pretty crap because it's only HD, it's not 4K, and it's got a little bit of jello in it. But then I just took it down the park, thought I'd just have some fun, and it was brilliant. As I said, it's like a little FPV quadcopter sports car, zipping through I'm not a freestyle, I don't do the flippity floppity and punch the gaps vertically sideways. I just like to fly around and under the trees and through the playground again. It's brilliant for that, absolutely fantastic. I really love it. I've just charged up my batteries. I'm going to have another fly when we finish the webcast.
I think it's quite funny actually, because I think I could probably count on one and a bit hands how many things I was actually sent last year. Most, I'm not a review channel anyway, so at the end of the day, for the most part, what I do talk about is something.
That's not what it says on your new title.
I know. I was waiting for that. I said it, and my brain went, he's going to give me crap in a minute. If you look at some of the big ones, Unboxing Therapy and things like that, I don't go out every day looking for it. There are some vendors I've openly asked about. Look, I've seen this. I really like the look of it. Any chance we can have a look at it? I think it's interesting. I think no one else has talked about it. I've got one or two things here that I've got on loan that I've got to go back, but it's a dirty word in the industry, and it's all changing. It's changed in the last 6 months. It's changed so much in this year.
It's interesting. I've noticed, originally when I reviewed the AXN, I did my build video. They sold heaps of them on the basis of that because it was an easy plane and it flew really well, and I showcased it, and it was great. And then Hobby King brought out the new AXN, and a lot of people said, send one to Bruce to review. And they didn't. They send all this stuff now, I think, to the Captain Blosh over in Poland because everything is good. And it's the same like FMS. I reviewed the Super Easy, and that's a plane I really love. It's a fantastic model, far better than the Hobby King Tundra. It's a brilliant plane. And I noticed FMS send review samples out to people, but they never sent me anything. I've had to buy everything I get from FMS because I don't know why, but it's like the companies are being very selective about who they send stuff to, I think, because they don't want any bad reviews. They only want good reviews. Yes. So they tend to choose the people that are going to give the good reviews. And that's fine by me, because my philosophy is if someone says, why don't you review this? I say, well, why don't you contact the company and ask them to send me one? And if they're not prepared to send one, then it probably gives you a clue as to the quality of the product.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, if I look at I don't sort of do the little stuff like you go right from a receiver, Bruce, right up to the radio, and you as I said over the years, my Taranis is because of you. You're the reason I bought a Taranis. You're the reason half the receivers I've got over this. Your fault, Bruce. Let's be honest, FR Sky wouldn't be where half they are today without Bruce, frankly, and the reviews and how you showcased the product in the early days. And it's funny. I think it's interesting because I get a lot of emails of nonsense, and now and again I'll get something which I think is interesting. And whilst I think I said I don't review it if I don't like it, I don't think I've ever had to send anything back. Just thinking about it, I don't think I've ever had a product I'm not happy with. So as much as I say that, I don't think I've had anything that doesn't work properly. Thinking about it, the more I think about
Chinese have really lifted their game.
Yeah.
So here now, look, we all now own almost ready to fly companies in China. We're sat there now. We're looking at the tariff issues, and now we're looking at the remote ID. What's our business plan now? Get into cars?
Sub 250. But that's interesting, isn't it? Because in America, the Americans, some of them are saying, sub 250 is okay. We're right. We can just stick with sub 250. But no, if you look carefully at the NPRM, they've effectively reserved the right to require sub 250 to be certified and registered as well in the future. It's not it's a temporary measure, possibly so they can say, well, no, the hobby is protected because you can build small planes yourself without any whatever, and people go, oh, that's okay. And then a year down the track, they'll say, no, everything's covered now, and it's too late. By that time, the NPRM's in there, and the power to do that is done.
It's interesting because let's look at the big 4 or 5. You've got DJI, Autel, Unique, Parrot. That's the big 4. Realistically there. Parrot, I think, will stick as they are for the next 6 months. They won't do anything. I think Parrot will just sit on the Anafi and milk it. Autel have laid their cards on the table and they've gone, this is where we're going to go for the next year, let's say. Okay, the Evo is interesting because it's not going to ship until 6 months, but the most of these models are not going to be in people's hands until March, April, May time. By the time a lot of this would have been cleared up anyway. So they're looking to get the early 2020 buck in and worry about the longer money buck later. There's a lot of rumors around DJI. I don't buy we'll see much in the first 3 months. And now I could be entirely wrong on this, but I honestly... January, February, and March is not a period of the year where there is a lot of money roaming around. There's some rumors circling right now. I don't buy all of it. I think, okay, what part of the market is stable? Well, you would argue that the commercial side or the industrial side is stable because whatever comes in, they're going to comply anyway. So larger industrial aircraft makes sense right now, as did the 250, Graham.
But we know that there's problems with the 200 series, and that's why the 300 series is perhaps coming out. Yeah. And the L3, it's Inspire 3, i3. It would seem that the market's just baying for it. I've got it on good authority that they're both next month.
Okay, if we look at the 200 series, I think part of the problem there is people could think they can fly them in the rain. Period. The police have been caught doing it so many times. Yes, the aircraft's had problems, but on the flip side of it, don't fly it in the rain and you won't have problems. I think the problem is when you say something is water resistant or waterproof.
Okay, yeah.
Someone's going to try and drown it. And I think you should, once you go down that road, you almost create your own problem. And I do think they marketed themselves into a bit of a corner on that one, in the sense of, I don't think they said anything wrong. They said water at certain pressure at certain degrees. But the problem is you're giving it to a pilot, a police officer, or whoever it is, and he's going, it's raining and I need this image. I'm putting this up. Next minute, it's on the deck. The Inspire 3, not convinced. Still not. I could be entirely wrong. I know nothing, hand on heart, on that. I know absolutely nothing. Yes, commercial operators appear to be begging for more hardware, but they're not going to go out and spend $5,000 tomorrow. What is it that an Inspire 3 can do that the Inspire 2 can't? And I've got the Inspire 2. Mine is here under the table right next to me. I don't see what a third version will bring to a commercial operator's table. More object sensors. They don't need them. Most commercial operators fly in ATI mode anyway to get the smoothest shots. Camera support. They've already got more cameras than anybody else in the industry. Better data rates. They're the only company to have RAW in the industry. No one else does it. So I don't see what people want it for. Do you get my point on that?
But it's new and shiny.
Yeah. I think the only thing the Inspire 3 could bring better is a slightly better second camera, because it's not very good on the first one, but not many fly.
Funny you should mention that. I'm not going to mention any names here, but I'm led to be believed, and I wouldn't be reading this from the person who sent it to me earlier, that it seems like 2 new lenses and sensors for the Inspire 3. So that sounds about right then.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It probably is it makes sense from let's gear it back up a bit, but it doesn't make sense of what the market needs. But at the end of the day, they're going to release aircraft. We know they're releasing aircraft. They've already committed to releasing everything with DJI AirSense, which is ADS-B in. So that is going to happen. Unique, because I was on about the big 3. I don't know where they stand. They still haven't delivered the H3. I've heard some rumors this week that they've lost partners, support partners in the USA. I don't know how true that is.
You've got to remember, though, that a lot of times when companies bring out new models, it's not for the benefit of the consumer. It's because they can make it cheaper, or there's some other reason. So that they're actually going to make a higher margin. So they'll replace an existing product with a newer, cheaper to make one that sells at a slightly higher price because it's new. So everybody wins.
You know, the only thing I will say on it is the chances are, if the tooling is running out on the DJI appear to make things in batches. If you look at their product release history, they will run a production run of something, and then it'll stop. And you take the Phantom 4 Pro V2, for instance, that was a classic example of that. Now, whether there was a production run of certain parts of the Inspire 1 for a period of time and then it ended, and I believe the arms were one of those things, the way they had someone make them, the carbon fiber arms, and they only had X amount of that left, and there's a point where that finishes, and that will happen with the Inspire 2 as well. And then the decision is, do you do a rerun of the existing product, or do you start looking at doing the next level and taking it a step forward? Because at the end of the day, there's bits of these, especially the carbon fiber aircraft, someone is making those arms for them, someone is supplying that's an outside expertise DJI don't do in-house. There's a lot of work around carbon production and having a mandrel and using autoclaves and things like that. I know a little bit about it, funny enough, but at the end of the day, that's probably not permanent production. There's probably a production run that happened, and then there's 10,000 pieces or 100,000 pieces XX, and then when that stops, there's a point, do you go, where do we go next? And the batteries actually seem that way as well. DJI seem to do their batteries very much that way too.
I suppose you wouldn't want too many sat on the shelf, would you? Technology, I mean, shelf life. What is the shelf life for those batteries? 5 years or something? You when technology might change, you wouldn't want to box yourself into a corner.
No.
With too big a production run.
No, it's interesting. There's a lot of there's a lot of very cheap Inspire 1s roaming around right now, but there's no batteries available. The battery is out of production, and it has been something I've noticed on the groups, and it's a hard one because the Inspire 1 launched in 2014 off the top of my head.
Well, they had a big run on those Inspire 1 batteries, didn't they? They had a big sale. Yep. Fire sale, and it did rather say to me that was then going to drive all the traffic to the Inspire 2 because you can't get the batteries for the Inspire 1. And
it is a problem because they can't just leave them on the shelves themselves. They can't produce them.
Yeah.
The problem they've got is they've got to produce a batch which they can shift. Their retailers can't keep them because they will die, and it is a difficult position for them. What do? Do they do a small run now and then charge twice as much because the costs are massively more? There is a point with RTF craft that everyone has to accept. In, say, 4 years, unless you've stocked yourself up, you could begin to have problems. Inspire 1, I think, was 2014. Is it right that you can't get batteries today? We're nearly 6 years down the line. I don't think that's unreasonable, personally. No. It's not ideal, and I completely understand users not being happy with that. But
there's no rush. There doesn't seem to be a rush for people to make up after a market once. No. There's no. I don't quite know why that hasn't happened. So what's on just supply chain issue? Money coming out of people's wallets. Yes, there's also that. There is also that. But what would you buy? So there's the manufacturers. Well, what are we going to build? And there you are, a commercial company. Well, what am I going to buy? Because in 6 years' time, let's say we buy the Inspire 1 equivalent, it's going to have to comply with something or other in pretty much most places of the world.
This is an interesting thing, going back to the hobby side of things. Where are the hobby companies in the kickback on this NPRM? Where are the Horizon Hobbies and the Get Us, Get FPVs? They're all just, what are they doing? I mean, and we don't know what they're doing, so therefore nothing's going to be coordinated. And it's like, oh, really, we're sleeping at the wheel and we're heading for a cliff.
It's interesting, actually.
It is a big surprise. Sorry, I was just, you're probably going to say as well, Ian, but it is a big surprise that the big hobby companies aren't jumping up and down. Hobby King should be going nuts because it's their market disappearing.
It's the only thing I'll say with the RC manufacturers, I actually think it's a little bit in their benefit. Because if I looked, I talked about this, I think, at the end of my other video. I think the RC manufacturer is about the only person in this who could potentially help comply with Network ID Limited. Because if you had a lovely radio which connected to your phone and then transmitted the data, Spectrum and Futaba could be one of the unforeseen winners in this with their high-end radios, but it would again require everyone to replace the radios. It's the only way you could sort of comply on a home-built aircraft if the radio was doing the network ID element for you.
Yeah, but who's going to buy a $1,500 Futaba radio to stay within 400 feet of themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to work. And also, you have to have a unique serial number for each model. So I guess they could use the receiver serial number. But then if you transfer it to another model, what happens legally? Is that then a new model? Do you have to re-register it? Or is it because the serial number remains unchanged? Is it simply an update to the model?
And that serial number has to be registered with the FAA, actually, so it's not even as simple as the receiver. The only thought around I thought was either you have to have, say, 10 in the unit. So, like you got your 10 model memory, that unit's been shipped with 10 unique serial numbers, all registered with the FAA. But I'm not even sure that complies. And Bruce is spot on there as well. Yeah.
And they'd have to have geofencing as well, remember? And so they have GPS in the receiver, which makes it a more expensive receiver. And you have to have some kind of flight controller so that you can actually take over control of the servos. And then, of course, it has to know what sort of model. The cost of the receivers would be so enormous, people will just buy crap from China and fly outside the rules. So they're going to lose. The big names would lose.
Yeah. I do wonder if they've sat back and looked at this and thought, we'll say nothing and see where this lands, because as you say, Spectrum, Futaba, they've got there's massive loss potentially here for them. Massive loss. Hobby King, again, a massive player. But even, where's the retail stores? Get FPV. They're huge. And yet there's very little. It's going to fundamentally affect their business on a daily basis. Yeah. Nothing.
You mentioned Hobby King, but actually that's sort of the word going around is that they're pretty much a spent force now in the hobby. And so I don't know that they're in a position to do much of anything. They seem to have wound right down, low stock levels. Some of the key figures seem to have left the building. Be interesting to know what happens to Hobby King in the coming months and years. But the American US retail side of things, these guys probably think, we'll just switch to the certified craft and sell those. It's the manufacturers, I think, that maybe we've gone from Spectrum. We're just going to get the Park Zone bind and flies, which are all set up with all the necessary bits and pieces. But that's not the hobby that we know. And the AMA don't realise that. They might think, that's great, but they don't realise that the real grassroots of their organisation, the old guys that go out on a Sunday afternoon smelling of nitro and petrol, they're the ones that are going to get hammered by this. I think they're going to get a big surprise.
Yeah,
when it's far too late. And in sort of other industry news and people leaving the building, Precision Hawk, for any of you that might follow that sort of thing, quite a few people have left the building in the last week. And they are the people that were very much part of all of this nonsense and pushing for it. So that company, as I've said before about the urban air mobility stuff, I think we're going to get a lot of regulation because of VC ideas that will never be used because it will never work. That company seems to be falling apart, and they're part of the flipping problem now.
Where are they going to end up? So are they going to end up in private?
One of them's at Wing. One of them's moved to Wing, one from Precision Hawk, and Wing, of course, got all sorts of fingers in pies. I don't know what's happened to the other one. So it is interesting to watch. So they had a voice in this remote ID, and now those people are going off to the Google back one, and the other one's going here, and this one's going there. It's chess pieces moving around, isn't it?
Maybe we should all join the Commercial Drone Alliance, take it over, and withdraw the demand for the MPRM.
I said we haven't got the wallets. Even if we all came together, we haven't got the wallets to beat Amazon and Google. That's the bottom line.
If a member's a member, isn't it? Is there an entry fee that's measured in millions, or what's the joining criteria for the CDA?
We could have a look, couldn't we?
Yeah, because you've got to sometimes backdoor strategies are the best.
That's what you told her.
That's going to be monetized.
That's the not for kids box ticked right there. It is. It's interesting. This year is going to be a very interesting year from a hardware point of view. I think There's a lot of great luck. There's no bad drone out there now. People can say, what's the best? It doesn't matter. They've all got good cameras. They're all decent. They're all playing.
Drone X is the bad drone.
There's bits I don't like. Autel are playing games on marketing. Don't agree with that one little bit, but that's their little bit of win. DJI will produce something. They don't have to be anyone. They're the gorilla in the room. They can do whatever they want. It's as simple as that. I think so, the reality is they'll sell whatever happens. At the end of the day, it's like Apple. They make it, someone will buy it. But
now, Gary, getting back to this thing, you said you were trying to get Josh Bixler on the program.
Yeah.
The AMA sort of made a bit of a reach out. You invited them. They haven't turned up. What are these people doing? Do they not know that the room's on fire? What's going on?
Well, it is us at the end of the day. But yeah, the AMA did. Yeah, they sent me an email. I said, I don't think that they didn't realise who they were sending it to, did they? So, yeah, come on, very welcome.
Their point of view could be heard by dozens of people around the world if they came on here.
Dozens of ones. So there's our membership options there for the Commercial Drone Alliance. So dear viewer and team, click the link. Do we want to be board members, which is $50,000 annually? Associate members, $25,000.
We can fund that. Surely we can go fund that.
Entrepreneurs and startup member, $5,000 annually. Commercial end user, $5,000 annually. Academic member, $2,500 annually. I could have shared this. That's what I should have done. I should have shared this thing and scrolled down. Let me do that right now.
How many members do they have? How many members are there in that? Because if there's only like 20 or 30 members, then the possibility of flooding the place with people less aligned to their cause and more aligned to ours is a very real one. I mean, if you look at how much did the AMA spend on lobbying over Section 336, it was millions, I gather.
Yeah.
Here's our options. There's our board member. I don't quite understand how you can get to pay to be a board member. I didn't know that was a thing.
Because it's all about the money. It's not about anything but the money.
Is that how? But most businesses don't work like that, do they?
No.
Or do they?
It's mostly the other way around.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs and startup and commercial end users. So I suppose yes. All right. We could do that.
Imagine if the AMA funded it with $1 million. At $5,000 a member, putting its members on the CDA, they could take over in a day, and then the whole thing goes away.
They're not going to tell us how many members they've got, but they've got a 501 non-profit organisation now. I know Patrick knows how to pull up the data. Yeah.
Did anyone see, you're talking about organizations, and I spoke to Gary about this before we went on. Did anyone see the Rotor Riot? Obviously, you got Red Cat have bought Rotor Riot, and the CEO or whatever he is of Red Cat did this shareholders sort of. It's basically an ad on a money website, a YouTube channel where one of these investors, and he's talking about Red Cat as a company, and they were talking about the Rotor Riot acquisition. And that's another company I feel very, very concerned. I don't feel concerned, but again, based on some of his comments, I don't know where they will be in 12 months,
And they're part of the FPV Freedom Coalition, aren't they? They're quite high up in that.
Yeah, well, the Rotor Riot aren't part of the FP. Again, some of the there's interactions, but not all of them are friendly, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously Red Cat have bought them now, and he's talking about what Red Cat offer and getting people to put money into Red Cat, and he's talking about what it's going to be worth, and investors, give us your money, put it in, buy shares, and you just looked at, and the way he described Rotor Riot, I just thought they don't even know what they've got.
They've got a lot of people offside, Rotor Riot offside with a lot of people. A lot of people have seen that connection and said, "Oh, we don't want any of this. It's no good." But I think something similar with the FPV Freedom Coalition. I think one of the members or the founders, whatever, has also got a relationship. I don't know. There's so much going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, and it looks almost as if some of the commercial entities are infiltrating the bodies that represent the hobby. So we maybe should have to do the same thing back. I find it also interesting that you can have a commercial drone alliance which qualifies as a not-for-profit.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, there we are. I don't quite understand that whole. Just any time you see lobbying or a lot of lobbying, it seems to come from not for profits. It doesn't.
The thing is, ultimately, it's well, if you look at the FAA's definition of what constitutes commercial operations, it's where there is a benefit from a flight. You know, where there's some kind of commercial benefit from a flight constitutes a commercial operation. Now, surely, if you are an organisation geared up to promoting the best interests through lobbying or whatever of commercial entities, you cannot be a not-for-profit, because ultimately someone's making a profit out of your activities. So if it's good enough for that to apply for qualifying as a commercial drone operator, surely the organisation should follow a same set of rules. If you're going to ultimately be increasing the profits of a company, you don't qualify as a not-for-profit.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's a great deal of mystery around all of this. But there's two names there, Lisa Ellman and Gretchen West. Names to watch. They're ex-AUVSI flunkies, people, and then
didn't that fall apart too with excessive funds and lack of interest?
They're sort of part of it, yes. And then the CDA was formed to save us all. In 2016. It's terrible what's happening. I feel sorry for you in America and I hope the rest of us don't get it. Look, we've been going over the hour now. What other news was there? What other news has caught the eye this week? It's not been a great deal, has it, really?
No, there hasn't been a lot. I've not seen that much.
I saw in the UK some model flyers went to their local MP to rally against the regulations, and the MP told them what they wanted to hear, but nothing's changed. So how did they get in the news?
It's interesting because they're like 2 years too late. It's like, guys, you should have done this 2 years ago. Our laws are set in place. We're done and dusted, fella. You know, it's
they're like the AMA. They're claiming victory. We're claiming victory. Yes, nothing changed, but we're still victorious.
Yeah, you know. 2 years ago we did a video on this, and we said, "Save our skies." Anyone remember anything around that?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. We did, didn't we?
Yeah. Sorry, guys, that's happening. June. Last day of June, we're all done.
We thought ADM was late for the broadcast. These guys are 2 years late.
Yeah, absolutely.
And compared to the FAA, it feels downright reasonable. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought it? Exactly. Yeah, and this whole sorry saga since 2007, 2008, when Patrick and I were first talking about this, it's just been ignored by the general modelling population. They haven't seen it coming, sadly, very, very sadly.
Well, that's because most of them spend their Sundays sitting around the field talking about what they've got and what they're going to build and what they have built, and doing very little flying, and it's more of a social thing. And these people, the people who need to be activated, are people that really, they just want to sit in the sun on a Sunday. They don't want to get radical or mobilise. You know, everything will be fine. It's been fine for the last 60 years. It'll be fine for the next 60. They just don't realise how the world is changing, and that's too bad.
Yeah. It is. It'll be what it'll be. You know, obviously the big change now, obviously in the UK, is we're heading towards the changes now around how the NQEs change into RAEs, and they're going to change. You know, we're changing one acronym for another. We've gone from an NQE to an RAE, and now you're going to be able to get your COFC from your RAE instead of your NQE, because it is literally getting. So I'd like to arrange my COFC. Are you an RAE provider or are you NQE? You know, and sorry, I'm currently an NQE, but I'm going to become an RAE. But your COFC won't be available until after this date. You know, so yeah, we're in that process now. And interesting, something I've spotted: 2 NQEs saying they're putting their courses together, ready for the COFC. Well, the COFC is meant to be the online test you take. Didn't see anything in the paperwork about online courses being a requirement. So I do wonder if they are going to be forcing people into taking a course and not just the online test.
Oh, I see.
Because it's interesting what up to a category C1, you require nothing, but C2 requires the COFC, which is below up to 4 kilos in weight. Now that's where we think most commercial operators were going to fall into. It's a nice easy one, not quite a PFCO, but you'll be able to fly something like an Inspire size craft close to people within 30 meters. However, the CAA said you've got to do this online test. and it said 30-question online test. However, these organizations are saying we're putting together our training course and material ready for the tests. Oh, hold on a minute. What training? Nowhere did it say training. So I do wonder how many of them will restrict access, because they are only going to be the providers. Only these REs will allow providers. And I do wonder how many of them will say, sorry, we're not going to let you take the test with us unless you've had a minimum of 1 day's training. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see.
But the great thing is, it'll really improve safety. The world's going to be a much better place once all
Won't
this is.
someone think of the children, eh? Won't someone
know.
just think of the children?
Yes, but once I've done it, I can fly within 5 meters of those children, so it's fine. It's all great.
Yeah, no, it's commercial interest left, right, and centre wherever you are in the world, isn't it? We were going to be joined by Tom, but obviously we've not been joined by Tom Bills, the drone lawyer from Australia, who has just gone through his whole process and put up a wonderful diagram today. And that's why I said, please come along. And he was going to, but he hasn't. And I think we should disappear. So when he arrives, we're gone. Did anyone else have anything else that they wanted to add before we go? No, I didn't see anything. Let's hope there's a bigger news week this week and something to topple us off the remote ID subject anyway. So with that, dear viewers, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. As ever, it was 2100 GMT again next week. Be safe, whatever you're doing, wherever you are in the world. Have some lovely flying if you're doing that. And we look forward to seeing you then. Bruce and Ian, cheerio. See you next week, guys. Take care. Bye-bye. It's those